in my entire childhood, all I want to do is be a rancher. That's all I want to do. And he'd tell me, no, do anything else. You don't want to do this.
Really?
Get a good job. Take your weekends off. Go to the lake. You don't want to. And no, I'm not going to do it.
This is the Real Food, Real People podcast.
If you've ever gotten beef at Whole Foods, it may have come from the real-life cowboy that we talked to this week on the podcast. We travel to Tonasket, Washington, and meet Austin Olma. Again, real-life cowboy. That's what he does. He had his spurs on when we recorded this interview in Tonasket. This is the Real Food, Real People podcast. I'm Dylan Honcoop, and this is documenting my journeys all over Washington State to get to know the real people behind our food. So, why do you do it? What you do? I mean, I imagine it's a huge amount of work, and it's your life. You live right here in the middle of it.
It's the only thing I've ever wanted to do since I could walk or talk. It always had something to do with cows.
So it's the animals.
Yep.
For you.
Yep.
Explain that. Why do you love them?
Ever since I can remember anything outdoors I did, there was a cow involved. My wife jokes every trip. She's like, if you're in a good mood, there's a cow at the end of it. I can't explain it. Always been involved with cattle, always loved it. Doesn't matter if it's miserably hot in the summertime. If you're working cows, it's good. And it's freezing cold in the wintertime, you're working cows. It's still better than anything else I've ever wanted to do or thought about doing.
So, man, dealing with animals, that was always the thing I didn't like to do, because animals are unpredictable.
Yep.
And they can make your life pretty miserable.
Yeah, no, it gets frustrating at times, and you get mad, but at the end of the day, there's nothing else in this world that I'd rather do than be working with cows.
What about the food part of it? Producing food. What does that feel like?
I take a lot of pride in it. I think we raise the best, cleanest protein source that the world can eat, that they've ever been able to eat, that the customer can buy and feed their family. It's the safest, most nutritious way and tastiest way to feed your family.
That's not the narrative that you often hear out there, though.
No, I'm public enemy number one in some people's eyes. Well,
why is that? Why is there such a different story?
Any of these podcasts, these ag podcasts, we say the same thing. It's the disconnect. It's, I don't know what the exact number is, how many generations people are removed from agriculture. You always hear the story, kids think milk comes from the grocery store. It doesn't come from a cow.
Yeah.
And, things like these are the gateway for us to try and open that door and try and bridge that gap to help educate people on, where their food comes from, how it's raised, why it's good for them, why it's good for the environment. And this is the only thing we can do, I think, to help bridge that gap.
Well, I think there is certainly a disconnect. That's what this podcast is all about, is trying to help close that, because lots of people don't have the privilege of being able to be on a farm very much, if at all.
Yep.
But to give them the chance to hear directly from people like you, no filter, nothing in between. We believe in it deeply, but I also wonder, thinking about the narrative about beef, it's not just the disconnect, though, is it? There's a lot of information out there, facts, and I use air quotes because they're disputed, and it seems like any person, any stance that they have on this, one way or the other, they have facts to back it up.
Mm-hmm.
To say, it's destroying the environment. Oh, no, it's sequestering carbon. This is actually, beef causes cancer. Oh, no, it's actually really healthy for you. How do you wade through all of that from your perspective? How do you tell people, no, this is what's true and this is what's not true?
It seems like that's the same with everything. It doesn't matter if it's beef. You can take football, 1 week we have the concussion movie, next, football. It doesn't, everything has two sides. And it seems like nowadays you either hate it or you love it. And there's not much middle ground in between on just about any topic. And that seems to be the society of the world we live in right now. And for me, I believe in what I do. I truly believe, and I love what I do. And that's what keeps me motivated and keeps me going. Because in my heart of hearts, I believe what I'm doing is good. The good that I'm doing way outweighs what anybody else thinks the evil I'm doing is. I guess if that makes any sense to anybody, makes sense to me.
Well, and I think there's a lot of disinformation going on too, that being a popular term right now. And, who's telling the truth, and do we need some official governmental arbiter of, what disinformation is and stopping it? I think in this world of food, not that I'm promoting that we have, somebody step in and say officially what's right and wrong. But I think people, when they dig into it, can see there is misinformation about what you do.
Yes, 100%. And it just comes down to the people, right? If you can take the time to do a little bit of research, think for yourself for just a second, just go on. You can go on the internet, but you have to do it with an open mind. Don't start looking for the answer that you've already kind of come up with. Sit there and sift through it, and people will figure it out. I mean, we run a lot of cows in open range areas, so I deal with public and people, and it's different for me because I'm a much younger generation for a cattle rancher. I mean, I'm 30 years old, so there's not a lot of us at this age, and I call it the old guard. Somebody new moves in the area, buys a 20-acre piece, and they're going to live out in the country, and we're an open range area. You don't fence it out. There's going to be cows in your yard, and nobody wants cows in the yard. If I have a cow get out here and it gets in our yard, my wife is chewing me up and down. So I understand that. And, the older generation that had been here for 40, 50 years, it was just whatever. Mm-hmm. But I find, you take time to talk to people. Hey, this is, what we're doing, and involve people. Don't just, this is what I do. I don't care what you have to think about it. Try and have these conversations with people and involve them. Tell them what we're, I always, people want to stop. I have a job to do. I don't want to sit there and talk about that. Hey, we're moving cows this direction today, and tomorrow just, keep an eye out. We're doing this. And people, in my 9 times out of 10 are happy. They respect you for, kind of involving them or letting them know, I'm just going to run over the top of people kind of deal. So I have a unique kind of relationship with people that not a lot of other ranchers have, and it's very area specific.
Well, and it's about respect too. People need to have a respect for growing food and farming and ranching and what you're doing. But those of us that come from that world have to respect the fact that they come from a different perspective and may not understand or have a different thought on what needs to be done.
Yep.
Right. So, and again, that's what this podcast is about. At least having the respect to have the conversation, like you're saying too. You do it one-on-one.
Yep.
We do it with a lot of people here, but it's just more and more of those conversations need to happen. Mm-hmm. I think to bridge this disconnect. What do you think is the answer?
You got to talk it out, even if it's uncomfortable. People are mad at you. You got to have that conversation. Yeah. It's just like anything, just like marriage, any relationship. I mean, if there's a problem and you don't start talking about it, it just becomes a bigger problem. And one day it blows up, and it's not good for anybody when that happens.
Well, and I think that's exactly right. I'm just thinking, what happens to our food system if this disconnect, this divide between those producing the food and those eating the food deepens or worsens? I think it's bad for all of those things that people are telling us to, that disconnect itself is bad for the environment because people don't necessarily understand. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of I'm sure you experience it.
Oh yeah.
Even just what you're describing too, people moving into the country that aren't used to it. That divide can be a problem.
Yep.
But also in the food system too, what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I mean, not to sound, really Debbie Downer doomsday. I mean, everybody has to eat. We all have to eat. So how far are the people producing this product going to be able to be pushed and bashed? And we're the type of people that it's been happening our whole lives, or we're kind of used to it. But I'm not going to say one day we're like, oh, we're not going to raise any animals. We're not going to raise any crops. We're not going to do that because you guys, everything we do is bad. So no, we'll just shut up. I mean, somebody's going to do it for the right price. But I feel like even as a society, everything, we keep pushing this envelope. We keep pushing. Eventually something's going to happen. Something has to happen to change people's minds. And I say it all the time, and it's probably not politically correct or anything, but us as Americans, we have it so good that we are creating our own problems. We create these problems that we think's a big deal because we don't have any real problems. I've heard it on other podcasts of yours and stuff. We talk about salmon habitat and everything. That's great. We shouldn't be trying to wipe out everything. Right. But us as humans, right? We've built civilizations. We keep expanding. We keep growing. Well, what in order to grow, to keep growing something there's a give and take, right? We start building houses anywhere. We're taking away environment from animals to better ourselves. And then now we've gone so far the other way. It's like, whoa, I as a rancher, we have to deal with stream banks on forest permits and stuff. We have to keep the stream banks healthy,
right, for
the fish. But then, you drive over to the other side of the mountains and here we are, we're putting in a whole new subdivision, strip malls. And I'm driving through and I can see this is all timber. Well, where's everybody freaking out about this? But God forbid I have too many cows go through a creek in one area and make it a little muddy. Mm-hmm. That's a problem. But we can, because it's
pavement versus
exactly. It's always if it's not happening in my backyard, I don't care. Well, it's happening in my backyard. People have a problem with it. But what happens over on the other side in their backyard? I don't say anything about it. 'Cause, nobody's gonna listen to me anyways.
Stopping just briefly to thank our sponsors, and they include the Dairy Farmers of Washington. You can check out what they're up to these days at wadairy.org. One of the big things that they have going on is a tour of the dairies in the community where I grew up in Whatcom County. It's called Whatcom This Way. Play on words, WHEY, Whatcom This Way. Check out wadairy.org for more information. It's a self-guided tour happening in June, and you're invited to go check it out and see Washington State dairies up close and personal and talk with the farmers themselves. It's very similar to kind of the MO that we have behind this podcast and what we're doing here on Real Food, Real People. Again, wadairy.org to check that out. Also, Mana Insurance Group sponsoring the podcast, and we appreciate their support. They're all about protecting your financial future. And making sure that you have what it takes if and when things go wrong, to not be devastated financially by any kind of problem or eventuality. ManaInsuranceGroup.com. Check them out online and also thank them for sponsoring the Real Food, Real People podcast. Now we go back to Tonasket, Washington, and continue our conversation with Austin Olma, a real-life cowboy there in Tonasket.
So talk about what you do. I mean, obviously we've been talking about you raise beef.
Yep.
Describe your operation. What do you do day to day?
We're a family cow-calf operation. It's my father, my brother-in-law, me, and 2 hired guys full-time year-round. Occasionally we hire a little bit of extra help when we're doing corn harvest or something. We raise corn for silage, a little bit of alfalfa, and we try and custom bale. We buy straw in the windrow and bale it down in like Mansfield and stuff if we can, or we got to buy straw and bring straw in to feed. Everything we raise on this place, we feed our own cows. We've kind of we've tweaked our feeding program as we've grown. Our cow numbers, our feed base has not grown, so we had to get more creative. So we raise a lot of corn silage to feed our cows. We feed everything in feed bunks or portable feed bunks. All throughout the winter, we're moving those portable feed bunks for our cows on corn pivots. And as we move them, as the mud and manure builds up around those, we pull the feed bunks, pile it up, in the springtime here, we load it all up in a manure spreader, spread it right on that field. We can spread enough manure now. We don't buy any fertilizer on our home place. And we still have a surplus of it. We're not really in the right area to sell that. We're a small area here, but we bought a used belt trailer this spring, and we're going to start hauling it. We have a couple lease farms, 8 to 12 miles from this place, and we'll start hauling that so we don't have to buy fertilizer, because everybody knows right now that's
it's expensive.
Expensive.
And this is the sustainability nutrient cycle, right?
Yep. So then on our cow-calf deal, we're 100% spring calving cow herd. We start calving heifers second week of February. Our cows start the 1st of March. We wrap up beginning of May. Generally, May we start turning out. We're shipping cows this week. We've shipped out to 2 different areas that we run cows in the summertime. We kind of stage all our cows. 70% of our cows are all ran on national forest permits. June's when we can start going on those. So we stage all these cows, get them close to their permits, start moving them up into permits. I spend all summer riding, moving cows, fixing fence, working on, I shouldn't say moving cows first. I fix fence first, work on water development, springs, then move cows. This feels like I spend 3 days fixing fence on forest permits. I'd rather be moving cows every day, but I have fence to maintain too.
So you're actually out there riding horse, moving cow, like legit cowboy stuff.
Yeah. It's at least 6 days a week,
Wow.
Mixing one day on the side-by-side, moving salt and fixing a water trough and stuff. And we have some areas that you still can't get access with a side-by-side. You have to pack everything you need, and
Just because it's too steep?
too steep, too brushy, timbery, and it's areas where they don't want any roads or anything for different wildlife habitat and stuff. So I mean, I take it for granted, but I get to be out there in the woods and stuff. I know people, they get to vacation. That's what they want to do. They want to go camping. I work here, and as long as the mosquitoes aren't eating you alive, it's a great day.
Yeah.
So throughout the summer, we're moving cows back here at the ranch and our leased farm ground. My brother-in-law and dad they do all the farming. My brother-in-law, he's kind of in charge of all the farming and stuff. So they're busy putting up hay, and we don't put up a pile of hay. We mainly do corn silage just to get that tonnage off of the acreage that we have. Roll into fall here, September, generally 3rd week of September, we get our first frost. So we're flying, trying to chop corn. Then at the same time, starting to gather, move cows, bring cattle back home here in October, start weaning. We background and feed all our calves here until about January, get them to 850 pounds. And then we're in a GAP program, Global Animal Partnership. We're GAP 4 certified farm, non-GMO. And so pretty much all our calves go to Beef Northwest, and they're all getting marketed through Whole Foods. That's kind of the niche we're in right now. I mean, it's a program we got into about 5 years ago, and so far it's worked really well for us, and we like it, and they like our cattle, so they keep buying them. So it works well for us. So then by the time we get to January, start shipping them back out again. We're right back here into February, and we started. It never stops. The cycle continues.
Talk about corn silage as feed. That's different than like feeding straight corn as grain, right? Because it that's more like a dairy forage where you chop the whole plant, they eat all the green.
We're getting the whole. I mean, we there's 6 inches of stubble left. We take the whole plant, to feed the cow.
So I guess, what about this whole grass-fed thing? Because that wouldn't qualify as grass-fed because they're eating corn.
Yeah, well,
but they're eating it differently than what people think of.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with grass-fed, grass-finished beef. If I've read some articles. You listen to people. I mean, if they want us all to switch to grass-fed, grass-finished beef, well, we don't have enough grass to it's not sustainable, or it's not scalable, I guess.
Right.
So, I mean, it's another niche deal. And we also, another little niche deal we do, we breed all our first calf heifers, cows that are having their very first baby, to Wagyu bulls, which is a Japanese, it's a, a niche high-end steak deal through Snake River Farms and Egger Beef. They're a super calving ease. They're great to use on first calf heifers, a little different looking animal, but we breed those and sell those directly back to Egger Beef in the Snake River Farms branded program. So yeah, always trying to find that niche, whatever we can do to squeeze every nickel dime out of these cattle to keep growing this thing and keep moving forward.
So you're not just going through the motions, doing it the same way you've always done it. You're kind of looking for
not at all
cutting edge.
And once again, we're a little different than most people just because, my dad didn't grow up on a ranch. My dad grew up on a 5-acre farm in Canada, right across the border there from Linden in White Rock, South Surrey.
Okay, yeah.
My grandpa did commercial he did whatever he could to make money and survive. And my grandpa was able in the 70s to buy a ranch here in Tonasket with his brother and another guy. And that's kind of how my dad kind of fell in love with, he loved animals. They showed steers. He worked in a feedlot, worked in a butcher shop. He loved animals. And so they'd come down here in the summertime and he just loved it. And he graduated high school, did 1 year. I don't even know if he did 1 year of college. He said, no, I'm not doing this. Bought a semi, started hauling paper products from Canada down to California, bringing produce back up. Did that for, I think, about a year, maybe 2. And at that time, the ranch that I grew up on, they kept trying to have people run it. At least nobody could stick. It wasn't working, and they know what they're going to do. And my dad kind of talked my grandpa into it, or grandpa's like, nobody else can make it run. I guess what's it going to hurt if you do it? And so we sold his truck. My grandpa hauled him down here. There was some wore out machinery. There was nothing. And he's like, well, have at it. And so it's an incredible story. I'm so lucky to be able to hear how he started with, absolutely nothing. He married my mom. She grew up on a farm on Vancouver Island. And my grandpa on that side of the family, he raised Black Angus cattle. He had a hog barn, some sheep, and they got married, and he leased my dad 40 head of cows, and it's been history ever since then. He started, leasing out farm ground, leasing out part of the ranch to put up hay on shares, so he didn't have any equipment, so he could have hay to feed his little group of cows, and everything just kind of snowballed. He talks about it. He's like, the first time I went to the bank, they laughed me out of there, and his bank, the bank manager at that time said, Derek, don't even try it. It's never gonna work. And he said, well, I don't really have anything else going, so I'm going to try. And he's like, I bought a book on how to get a loan. He's like, pretty much just said, just make up and lie. He's like, so that's what I did. He's like, to finally get my first operating line, go buy a tractor, an old crappy used Oliver tractor. And he was out there disking and I wasn't born yet. This was probably in the mid 80s. I wasn't born until 91. So, my mom said all he worked 7 days a week. It's a typical old story of those first generation guys, sun up till sundown every day. And he just built it from there. I remember he kept telling my mom, when we get to 200 cows, you can quit. My mom's was a lab tech, worked at the hospital, so she had a good paying job. He's like, that's the only way we survived is because of her. I was like, I was making zero money, but I just had these goals, he's like, I guess, or this vision, and just kept. And you remember, that's our family joke is, when we get to 200 cows, you can quit. When we get to 200 cows, well, when we get to 400, when we get to 600, and it just gets so. My mom is still working to this day. So now the deal is, when she turns 62 here, she can retire, or she's actually, I shouldn't say she can. She is drawing the line in the sand. That's it. So, it's just crazy. Like he says, he's like, I was given an opportunity by my dad. I took it, I ran with it. And that's kind of how we've always been. He gave me opportunities when I was a young kid, 14, 15 years old, to do things that I wanted to do with the ranch. A 15-year-old kid, I was, making breeding decisions and, moving cows or shipping cows. He's like, I got to put up hay. you have to pair out these cows. Pair out these cows. The cow and calf have to match. Get on a truck, go to the right permit, and survive that summer. He's like, you gotta do it. And yeah, I didn't even think twice about it. Now I'm looking back. I'm like, I have 2 sons, a 6 and a 4-year-old. I'm like, good Lord, in a couple of years, am I going to be able to let them do that?
Yeah.
And I'm so lucky that he and in my entire childhood, all I want to do is be a rancher. That's all I want to do. And he'd tell me, no, do anything else. You don't want to do this.
Really?
Get a good job. Take your weekends off. Go to the lake. You don't want to. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. I was going to become a vet. I was like, I want to be a beef cow vet. Well, I found out you can't just be a cow vet. I was like, oh, forget that. I don't like school that much. I did go to college, and I didn't want to. But he's like, you're not coming back here until you go to college. So went to college for 3 years, finished my last year online. We had a guy quit, and we had lost all our hay in a hay fire in 2012. So I was like, this is a good excuse. I'm staying. I'll finish online.
Where'd you go to school?
Montana State University. Okay. And I will say, looking back, that was one of the best experiences, greatest things. I don't remember much from classes, but the people part of it. Yeah. Getting into college, I tell the story all the time. My best friend from high school, we went to college together. We're roommates, and we were in Roski, which was the outdoor recreation dorms. So I'm like, it's going to be a bunch of rednecks. No, it is all ski bums and everybody from Vermont. And I'm like, we don't really, this isn't quite what but it was great because, I'm meeting the same thing we're talking about today. People had no idea. And so we, you talk and start to learn. You talk about an eye-opening experience. You're like, it was no different. So I started in animal science. And then I sat through one class learning why buffalo get in a circle in the wintertime. Like, I know because it's cold and we're using our body heat to protect ourselves. I should probably spend this money a little more better for me. So I switched into business and got a business management degree. But just dealing with, how do I say this? Just different perspectives, different backgrounds on life. Like
totally,
that was such an eye-opening experience. I was in an ag literature public speaking class, and we had to somehow we got onto the topic of like migrant workers and stuff. And every kid in Montana was like, oh, we don't need migrant. We don't need illegals. It's illegal. It's illegal. And I'm like, whoa, time out.
Understand the
Do you know that if we don't have migrant workers, agriculture in America comes to a screeching halt? I was like, that's, it's no different than, any, immigrants throughout time, right? You're trying to come here to better yourselves. Yep. You don't have anything. So you start. It's hard to, I don't want to sound disrespectful. You start at the bottom, less, what's the word I'm looking for? Jobs that not everybody wants to do. The kill plants, picking apples, cherries.
That's my family comes from a different part of the world than a lot of immigrants are coming from now, but that's the same story. Yeah. Started at the bottom. They came with nothing. Yeah. You go back a few generations.
And I have, one of my very best friends that I work with daily, his family, they immigrated to the U.S. from Mexico, and he had to do it twice. They got caught the first time, hauled back across, came back, and he's raised his family here. He's got a daughter who's in college at Colorado State University. She's going in to become a lawyer, and his parents, they worked in orchards. His dad ran heavy equipment. He's been a ranch manager, cowhand guy, and it's really neat when you grow up in that and you can see, we talk about the American dream, we fantasize about it, but when you can see it, for me, my
people
family
are doing it,
my family, it's not like there's that much difference when you drop across the border to Canada than it is here, but we're still came here because there was an opportunity up there. My dad saw an opportunity here, and we took it and ran with it. And that's what still makes America so, no matter how much us as Americans, sometimes we like to kind of downplay that or don't. It just goes right back to the food thing, right? Such a disconnect. You've been here for 6-7 generations. Your great grandfather that came here, he had a vision. He was going to try and better this for his family, and look at where you are now. And I think people forget that, and it's so fresh for me. I'm a first generation American, so I just respect that, or I just understand that how powerful and special this American dream and stuff is.
So how much food do you guys grow for people to eat here? How many cows are you caring for?
So we care for, this year we calved out 1,442 cows. That's what was in the computer here.
Wow.
We're just starting to ship everything out, so the number's fresh. Started with literally 40 cows leased to now 1,400, and we just, anytime we thought there was an opportunity that we could take, we've taken it and ran with it. Whether it was the best decision we ever made, maybe sometimes it didn't work out, but we just,
well, you have to take risks. Yeah. Otherwise you're going to miss opportunities.
And make no mistake, I mean, we have debt, we have operating lines and everything, just like a lot of other people. Like we joke about, like, debt is a hell of a motivator. Like, this has to work.
Yep.
And it does. It stresses you out. It stresses my dad out, but we keep pushing.
Back to that number, just thinking about the amount of food, what would you say average is per cow of meat that people can eat that's produced?
I would probably have to Google that to know exactly what, because gosh, I'm trying to think. I mean, I know that number of how many families in American, that's normally based off an acre.
When you butcher a cow, hanging weight, and then obviously there's bone and stuff in that as well. But
you're like, a
few 100 pounds.
Oh yeah, 60% of a animal's live weight's kind of what you budget for your hot carcass weight or your carcass weight. So, geez, I have to get my phone out and do some quick math there.
That's a lot of food.
And it's not just me. Every single farmer's doing it, right? What are we? We used to say we're 2% of the population. I think now we might be down to 1%. So
yeah, I actually got the chance to meet with the head of the American Farm Bureau a few weeks ago, who was out touring my area. And I think the number that he was talking about this year, the latest, is 1.4%. And then of that, I know, there's a lot of those folks who are really small hobby farmers that, they produce a little bit of food. But the bulk of the food that we eat is grown actually by less than 1% of the population. Which is crazy when you think about it.
I mean, we can keep beating a dead horse here. It's a disconnect. I mean, we're less than one, not even a full person out of 100. If you're looking at that, is feeding. It's. And you sit there and think about it, it's like, holy moly, it's an uphill battle. But a lot of we've been dealing with the same problems for 100 years. It feels like, my buddy gave me an article the other day from, it had to be 1916. There's some lawsuit where they were trying to kick some ranchers off of a Forest Service permit. And he's like, look, it's the same thing, the same threats that we deal with today, 100 years later.
So you guys raise, to that point, some corn as a crop. Do you raise grass like in fields, or is the grass that the cows eat just out on rangeland?
We don't, and that's where we count. We start talking about this beef production and fake meat and the real meat. Every single one of our cows grazes ground that is useless for anything else except for timber harvest, on our permits. But we don't have any, cows on circles or anything like that. Everything that's farmable, we farm.
So it's not like, because that argument often comes up, well, what if you use that ground that those cows are eating the grass off of to grow vegetables and other things for humans to eat? Wouldn't that be way more efficient?
Yep. Yeah, no. I mean, everything, you can look out the window here and see that steep hillside. It's rocky and there's sagebrush and a little bit of cheatgrass and June grass and a little bit of crested wheat. I mean, there's nothing a person can survive on out there, but a cow does very, very well.
Well, naturally, that's what they evolved to do. Yeah. They go around and they find every little bit, and they graze on it, and being ruminants, they can turn low quality stuff into high quality fat and protein.
Yeah, we say it all the time. It's like magic. It's like a miracle. This cow can take something that is completely useless to a human being and turn it into one of the cleanest, most powerful proteins that a human thrives and can survive on. And it's just crazy because you see it all. You'll see a YouTube clip. You'll see something. Oh, as a human, I can eat this grass. It's like, no, you cannot. Try it.
Yeah.
But they'll make a video of them chewing it up or mixing it in a smoothie, and it gets a couple million views. And then there's some younger person who takes that and they run with it.
Do you think the tide is starting to turn, though? Like, not everybody. Certainly there are the loud voices out there that are super anti-meat and whatever. Yeah. But I think there's a growing awareness that protein, certainly, and now even fat is actually good for you and what our bodies run on.
100%. I do believe that I do think we're starting to, there is a little bit of a shift here, especially health there's, the divide there with eating healthy, being healthy, not being healthy. And you can see it with people, and anybody who takes health into, researches it or takes it, they figure it out pretty quick that the proteins that we can raise are 1,000 times healthier for you than anything that they're right now trying to create in a lab. And
by eating things that are non-meat sources. I mean, you can do it, and there are people who have to do it for various health reasons, and that's fine. I'm not like an anti-vegan.
No.
But at the same time, my own personal health journey, I don't think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but within the past year, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which is, very rare in adults. It's usually diagnosed when people are young. So I guess it's rare, not the thing that I want to be rare about. But with that, it's an autoimmune disorder. For people who aren't familiar with diabetes, it's all about how your body produces sugar or processes sugar and insulin and all this stuff. I've had to change so much how I eat. And it's been eye-opening for me, better sources of energy and just how much I was relying on sugar and refined sugars and different things like that. I've never been a big-time health nerd, but it's like beef is one of the main things I keep coming back to of what fuels me in a balanced way.
Yeah.
And it's how I'm much better managing my health generally, and specifically now diabetes, now that I'm a diabetic.
Yeah.
It's crazy how, those kinds of experiences make you realize, wow, what I used to take for granted is maybe not the best way, and what we as a society, for 30, 40, 50 years, fat is bad. Everything's got to be low fat. Well, wait a second. Fat is fuel for your body. Yeah, too much fat is bad. Oh, cholesterol. Well, what is the truth about how, the cholesterol that clogs your arteries isn't necessarily the same cholesterol that you're eating. It's produced by your body. Why is your body producing too much? Once you get into all of that, it's like, wow, getting back to the basics of simple foods for fat, protein, and veggies as well. It just, that's what I eat now.
Yeah, keep it simple. The simpler, the little. I'm not a health nut. I eat out of the hot case at the mini mart quite a few times. I'm not gonna say a day, but my wife would probably beg to differ on that. But the things you read, the simpler you can make it, the better it is for you.
Yeah.
So why on earth would we want to move Bill Gates to synthetic meats that good Lord has a ingredient list? I can't even pronounce half the words in the ingredients list. It's like, come on.
Yeah. Well, it's supposed to be more climate friendly.
Yes.
But from what I'm learning about all this stuff and all these conversations and about health and everything else, it seems like, why don't we focus on helping farmers and ranchers who are already doing a better job than they're getting credit for, do an even better job?
Yeah.
That's, if you're worried about carbon footprint, that's what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
Rather than, I can't imagine with all the other inputs, a fake meat, number one, I don't think it's healthy for you. Number two, how can the carbon footprint at the end of the day really be?
Well, and not to, because we can go down a serious wormhole here. How is us as America, I mean, we're powerful, we're the best country in the world. It doesn't matter what we do to change our carbon footprint to go, because what if the rest of the world doesn't do it? We're wasting a lot of money and a lot of research and a lot of time doing something that is not, in my mind, it's not going to matter. Because if China doesn't hop on board, which it doesn't look like they are, they do whatever they want. What does it matter what we do here? It's not going to. I shouldn't say this, but it's not going to save the planet.
Well, I think it is time for real talk on that. You know, it's not just a political talking point. It's about really what's going to work and what's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's time to get practical.
Yeah.
And that's where the farming community can be good at that.
Yeah.
And that's what I always hear on a lot of different things. Like, give it to the farming, you can give it to farmers and they'll figure out a way to do what, whatever it is, they'll overproduce whatever you need to produce. Yeah. That's just the way they're wired. So give that to farmers as a challenge and they'll figure it out.
Yeah. And 100, I mean, we keep records of our sale weights and head counts and everything. And just in the last 10 years, we've been able to improve, our breeding practices, the cattle that we're bringing in to breed, and the breeders we source this stuff from, they're improving. We're using genomics. We're using technology now to push this thing forward. We're increasing our sale weights of these calves. Also, in the same time, decreasing the mature cow size, which if you decrease the mature cow size, their intake is less on resources. Right. So then we're able to run more cows on the same amount of ground with the same amount of feed ground or production ground to feed them. And so on the same amount of acreage, we're able to produce way more. Just in 10 years, we can speed things up and keep progressing, keeping this thing becoming more and more efficient. That's always our thing. Yeah. We got to be more efficient. The more efficient we can be, as we grow here, if we can grow this thing, but it's got to be efficient, because that's the only way we make money is we do the most we can with the littlest input resources we have available.
And you don't do that, you go broke.
Exactly. In a hurry.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me here out to the ranch. Yeah. This is awesome to be here.
No, thank you for coming out. I hope I didn't ramble too much.
These are the real stories and the real information that we're trying to get directly from the people doing it.
Yeah.
Not through some marketing agency that's cleaning it up and all making it perfect and pretty for, I'm done with that. And I think a lot of others are too. So I appreciate you being willing to open up and just share straight from the heart.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for giving me a chance to be a voice out there.
This is the Real Food, Real People podcast. These are the stories of the people who grow your food.